we'll also have the verses up here in the auditorium here. Joshua chapter 3, and the title of the message is Crossing Your Jordan, Facing Fear and Uncertainty. Crossing Your Jordan, Facing Fear and Uncertainty, from Joshua 3. Are you facing uncertainty this morning? Maybe there's work uncertainty. Maybe you work in a factory and there's layoffs left and right, and some of your colleagues in the break room talk about how you and that friend may be next. Is there uncertainty at work? Again, layoffs going on, and you're worried, man, am I next? What the heck will I do with this mortgage and 3 kids and 2 dogs? And so maybe there's some uncertainty at work. Maybe a new private equity firm. I was listening to some guys complain about private equity firms, these companies that take over and then tear up the place, basically load it up with debt and lay off tons of people. So maybe you work for a company that recently was a target of a private equity firm, and now there's all these changes, and maybe some of the uncertainty is just you're just not happy with what's going on. You feel like they're driving the business into the ground, and you're not sure, what's my next move? This is all I've known as an adult the last 10 years. Where am I going to work? Are you facing work uncertainty? Maybe there's some relationship uncertainty. Perhaps someone's listening to me today that's facing relationship uncertainty. Maybe I'm talking to a ma'am, you're married, your wife, and you love that man. Everybody around you thinks they don't see what it is you love this man. But here you love this man to death, and sure, maybe you could have watched your mouth a little bit. Maybe you wish you could take back some of the words you've said, but now he's left, you're separated. Now you're praying and begging God to lay it on his heart to come back. So you want it to work, but you're uncertain. Does he want it to work? Was that last argument the last straw? Some of us might be facing relationship uncertainty. Or maybe you're just dating, and sir, maybe I'm talking to a young man that she's wanted to take a break. You are uncertain about what's going to happen. Are you here today facing some health uncertainty? Health uncertainty. You know you're not feeling right. You know something's a little different, but you're not worried. Finally, your girlfriend's got you to set up a doctor's appointment. But now the uncertainty start to kick in. You've Googled a little bit too much, and I'm always amazed how I'm hypocrite. I sometimes scare myself. I know some others who you start to scare yourself Googling. So maybe I'm talking to someone today that, again, you know you don't feel right. Something is a little different. But that doctor's appointment is not till a couple of weeks from now. Meanwhile, you're uncertain. Hey, is what Mildred said true? Do I have this? Do I have that? Maybe some of us are facing some health uncertainty. We're waiting for test results or waiting for that first doctor's appointment. Some of us may be facing some uncertainty, and God wants to speak to you through Joshua chapter 3. Others of us may say, hey, there's nothing uncertain to it. Am I talking to someone who's just downright afraid this morning? Maybe you say, hey, no, there's uncertainty. I'm in the midst of something right now, and I'm terrified. No, Dwayne, I wouldn't tell my girlfriend. I wouldn't tell my wife. I won't even talk to you about it, Pastor. No offense. But inside, I am scared to death. Today's passage is from the book of Joshua, chapter 3, and we're looking at crossing your Jordan, facing fear and uncertainty. And then may the Lord use this if I'm talking to someone who, again, is facing some uncertain times, or maybe you would say, hey, no, there's nothing uncertain to it. I'm in the midst of something. I'm scared to death. Something's going on at work, something going on in my life, my finances. For context, right, we're going to jump into Joshua 3, but let's say we were time travelers, or if we can get into a time machine, go back in time, open up that door, right? So imagine going back in time, we're going to go about 40 years before where we're at in today's message, but just to build some context. Imagine we're in this time machine, we go back, open up the doors, and when we walk out of that door, we notice we're on this dirt road. There's mountains on the right of us, mountains to the left of us, right? So some of us notice that, geez, we sure as heck can't go to our left or our right. And then someone says, hey, turn around. We turn around and you see what looks like a large, like a forest fire. You see what looks like smoke on the background behind you, but that's not smoke at all. It's a dust cloud from Egypt's elite army bearing down on you and the people of God, right? So when you open up this time machine, you're here with the people of God, the nation of Israel. Moses has just led Israel out of bondage in Egypt. And so you know that, well, geez, someone says they think it's the Egyptian armies coming after us. I see what looks like smoke, but it's really a dust cloud behind us, mountains on both sides of us. You're moving forward and you notice you're seeing seagulls in the distance. Right? So smart ones of us are starting to do the math. Wait, why are there so many seagulls? Why do I smell salt in the air? And then the rumor starts to come back in the crowd of people that we're walking with that, hey, there's an ocean up in front of us. And you hear cussing, I know it, explicative. Moses doesn't know what he's doing. We're soon to die. Egypt's elite forces is closing in on us. We have mountains on both sides of us, and there's an ocean in front of us. Can you imagine how terrifying that would be? It's one thing to watch a movie of Charleston Heston doing it. It's another thing when it was real life. So about 40 years before this Jordan crossing, God led his people to the Red Sea crossing. It was at the Red Sea, as you may or may not know, that God parted the Red Sea. But it was terrifying up until then, right? So if you were traveling along with the people of God back then, you were terrified to know mountains on either side, an elite force coming to take care of business behind you, an ocean in front of you. But God delivered his people by parting the Red Sea. Now, fast forward, it's about 40 years later. A much younger crop of God's people, a younger generation, are standing in front of the Jordan River at flood stage. And so that's really kind of the context. God has already led his people to a terrifying position where he parted the Red Sea. It's 40 years later, a younger generation now is standing before the Jordan River at flood stage. Here's the big idea. If you're taking notes, the whole sermon in a sentence, right? If you don't get anything else out of the message, it's this: be encouraged and don't fear when facing uncertain and frightening times. Be encouraged and don't fear when facing uncertain and frightening times. You know, I've said it tons of times before. If you're ever at playing Bible trivia somewhere, or at a bar, or watching a game show, to the surprise of many, maybe not all of you, the number one cited command in all the Bible is not love God. It's not love your neighbor. You know, come on, it's got to be it, right? You put a lot of money that, the number one command in all the Bible in terms of the number of times it's mentioned, right? You would think it's one of those two. No, it's fear not, right? The book of Joshua alone has a ton of references, right? The number one cited command in terms of how many times you see it in some form or another is this command to don't fear. Fear not, don't be afraid. So again, the big idea today is be encouraged and don't fear when facing uncertain and frightening times. Consider these three truths to help you be encouraged and not fear when facing uncertain and frightening times. The first truth is Yahweh, if you're at home, Yahweh or God leads us through the unfamiliar places of our lives. Yahweh leads us through the unfamiliar places of our lives. We'll see that in Joshua 3, verses 2-4. If you're here in our auditorium, you may not can see this from home. You know, I have these letters, YHWH. And just a review, so the Old Testament priests and scribes would not write out God's name, and so they would just use these letters, and you notice there's no vowels. So whenever you see this in notes, or I don't know, you might see it on a bumper sticker or something, that YHWH, it's just shorthand for God's name. And so the more academic among us, so you'll see, more, academic type folks, professors, pastors who may have gone to seminary, may call God by his legal name, Yahweh, or lay people, country people may call him Jehovah. Ready? Yahweh, Jehovah. We really don't know the pronunciation of his name. So you'll see God do the thing just to shorten it and did a little Bible study for us. Yahweh or Jehovah, that is written out like you see it, is God's legal name. Right? So just as a review, and this might be new to some of us, it might be new to the Bible, the God of the Bible, keeping God of the Bible, has revealed himself through different names. Elohim, El Shaddai, El Rohi. Right? So there's different names that God has revealed in the Bible to tell us about himself, his character. But God's legal name, right? So God goes by different names to show us who he's like, but his legal name, the covenant name that he would sign a legal document, right? So the moment you said, Lord, I give my life to you, please save me, God pulled out his Mont Blanc and he signed Yahweh, his legal name, his legal or covenant name, right? And so that's, today you may go by Pookie, you may go by Ray Ray, you may go by Juicy, right? Some girl, your friends call you Juicy, they call you JoJo, they call you Pookie, they call you Ray Ray. But when it came time to sign that mortgage, You wrote your legal name, right? So just know God's covenant name. His name, we don't know how to pronounce it, ironically, is academically, you want to sound smart, say Yahweh or Jehovah. So again, here's these initials. The three truths to encourage you to not fear when facing uncertain and frightening times. As he says, the first one is Yahweh leads us through the unfamiliar places of our lives. The second truth we're going to see is that Yahweh's directions and leadings are oftentimes terrifying. Yahweh's directions and leadings are oftentimes terrifying. You'll see that in verse 8 and 15a, the first part of the verse. The third truth we'll see quickly is Yahweh is the just-in-time God. Yahweh is the just-in-time God from verses 14 through 17. Here's the first truth. The first truth to help you and I be encouraged to not fear when facing uncertain and frightening times is Yahweh leads us through the unfamiliar places of our lives. And you're going to see this in Joshua 3, 2 through 4. Joshua 3, verse 2. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priest carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Verse 4. And remember the ark, if you remember from Raiders in the Lost Ark, right? Remember it's this kind of box-looking structure. It was a box-looking structure that on the top of it had the two angels facing each other with their wings facing, and then the priest carried it with a pole, right? So if you're new to the Bible or not familiar, it's the ark. It was the temporary, mobile dwelling place of God at that time. So of course, God was all over. He encompasses the universe, but symbolically, God dwelt within this ark, this box-shaped thing that was carried with these two poles through the ring. So the priest would carry the poles on their shoulder with that box with the two angels facing each other. So the officers were saying, hey, when you see the ark of the covenant moving, follow it. And here's verse 4, Joshua 3:4. Then you will know which way to go. Then you will know which way to go. Here's the phrase. Since you have never been this way before. Right? You're going to see God move out. Follow God. That way you'll know which way to go. Powerful phrase here in verse 4. Since you fill in your name, right? It's not just about the people of God, 5,000 whatever years ago. Since you have never been this way before. Remember, Yahweh leads us through the unfamiliar places of our life. It was God. It was God, right? Follow the ark. He leads you. He knows this is unfamiliar territory for you. It was God, not bad luck, not misfortune. It wasn't a person. It wasn't Israel's mistake. It wasn't like someone didn't follow the Waze app, didn't follow their TomTom or whatever navigation you use. It wasn't Moses or Joshua's fault for getting lost. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't misfortune. It was God himself who led the people of God to this terrifying, uncertain moment where they're standing in front of this river, rushing, right? The big old tree trunks are flowing down. One guy said, I see a cow, there's a cow, look at the cow. This is the Jordan River at flood stage, but the point you need to know is that it was God who led them here. Yahweh leads us through the unfamiliar and downright scary times in our life. It's not bad luck. It's not just unlucky me. I have the worst of luck. No. It's a loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God who orchestrated you to be where you are in this uncertain and frightful time. It was God, not bad luck, not misfortune. Oh, no, Dorian, it was me. They say I might have the sugar, but we country people. I always thought it was a Southern thing to call diabetes the sugar, but I was talking to a lady a couple of weeks ago who I'm assuming grew up here in New York. She called diabetes the sugar. Someone maybe listening to me and Don, it's my fault. I should have laid off the milkshakes and the fast food. I may have the sugar. I'm just waiting for the diagnosis. It wasn't you and your mistakes that has you in this scary place as you wait for the results. I should have left them cigarettes alone. I saw the ads. It wasn't you. God could have given you the gumption to put the cigarettes down, to put the cake down. God, not bad luck. Yahweh, not misfortune, not a person, not your own doing. God could have orchestrated those things. It is when facing uncertainty and frightening things that God shows us amazing things. Right? Part of why God has you to this uncertainty. Yeah, will she come back? I love her. I knew I should have just stopped me. I just put golf ahead of her. She always wanted to go shopping. I wanted to go to the golf course. Now I want her back. That uncertain time, when you're facing uncertainty, when you're facing frightening, it's God's chance to show us amazing things. Joshua 3:5. Joshua said to the people, set yourselves apart to the Lord. Tomorrow, here it is. Part of the reason why God led him to this frightening stage, Joshua tells us, tomorrow he'll do amazing things among you. He'll do amazing things among you. I'm not saying it's the only, I'm not saying it's the primary. Part of the reason why God leads us to uncertainty and frightening times is to do amazing things from us, right? As I'm trying to train up the boys, the difference between the person who laughs at you and says, how can you believe in God? There's no God, right? And I'm trying to get them to see when someone is debating you, or as you guys get older and people say, there's no such thing as God. God is dead. He's a crutch. Your dad's a pastor. How funny. It's a crutch. God doesn't exist. You'll know God exists because you will have so many experiences with him. And I'm trying to teach them, like, buddy, see when God is working in your life, it's God, right? God wants to do amazing things in your life. He becomes more real to you. Yahweh becomes more real to you in the uncertainty and frightening times. Right? Do you understand that the unfamiliar, the unknown, and scary circumstances you're dealing with is not the product of bad luck, misfortune? You're in the wrong place at the wrong time. I should have did it differently. It's all my fault. It's my fault. Do you understand that it's God who's orchestrating you to this time of uncertainty and this time of fear? Second application is no human being, including yourself, has led you to this unfamiliar place you're in. God is sovereign, old fancy theological term for God is orchestrating stuff. Right? I'm waiting for my chest x-rays to get back. I knew it. People told me I should put down those cigarettes. God could have given you the gumption to put down the cigarettes. God is there, right? That new opportunity you're facing, the new crisis, maybe you just got promoted, now you're in this new position. You're like, geez, I don't know how, I still don't know how I got the job. I just needed more money. I applied for it. My coworkers told me to apply for it. I'm scared to death now that I'm the new executive vice president. Whatever you're facing that's uncertain, God knows where he's leading you to. It's good, and he's partly doing it to do amazing things in your life. Here's the second truth. Yahweh's directions and leadings are oftentimes terrifying. I don't like that about God, right? I don't like that, but I don't like the alternative, right? You want to go follow some other God? Yahweh, the God revealed in the Bible, his directions and leadings are oftentimes terrifying. Here's Joshua 3:8. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Right? So when you see that, and when you read that, if you're at home, you're listening, or if you're following on the lap, that seems like, oh, yeah, easy peasy. Yep, okay, so tell the priest. Yeah, can you imagine the two guys in the front? So that's really what the face of the two guys in the front with the pole beam on their shoulders carrying the ark. When you reach the edge of the Jordan's water, go stand in the river. That sounds easy peasy, right? Well, no big deal. I mean, how many times you walk up to a little creek? Just put your foot up to the creek. But not so fast. Verse 15. Now, the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Right? So again, real easy. Okay, yeah, just go walk up to the edge of this river. Geez, a little kid can do that. Now try doing it when the Jordan River is at flood stage. Here's important to know about the geography of the Jordan River, and I'll use the illustration here. I remember it was high school, and I can still see it with my mind's eye. I can see looking out the van window to my right and left. I was in high school traveling down to South Carolina, and it was a high school trip. I think it was one of the sermon contests, a preaching contest I was in. And I remember the youth pastor that was driving, a couple of us said, hey, wake up, wake up, wake up. So we woke up, and here we're on this bridge crossing the Mississippi River. So that was my first time ever seeing the Mississippi River. I was high school, hick from Indiana. And I remember the river was just so wide. And I remember just thinking, what a majestic river. It's everything I imagined it to be, right? In my mind, I just thought the Mississippi River was like as wide as the ocean and you couldn't see across it. So the Mississippi River is this wide, broad, majestic river at certain points, right? The problem is the Jordan River is not this wide, majestic, like the picture you see here if you're in our auditorium, further down south. The Jordan River is not this wide, barely see the other side, majestic river. It's not that. It's more the Jordan River, especially at flood stage, isn't really that wide, but the waters are rushing. And the second feature that you need to know, the super to know, you don't wade into the Jordan. It's like, and I use that phrase, it's like trying to wade into a bowl, right? When that first step, you were in it, right? So there's no, oh, I'm so scared. Let me just take a couple steps and see what God does. The Jordan River, as you see, here's a picture on the left, if you can see it. This is modern times with the bridge. But look at that water rushing. All right, so imagine, right? You're of a certain age, or maybe you have your parents traveling with you, getting ready to cross the Jordan River. So here's your mom with her walker, or you realize you have a baby carriage. God is asking you to step into this river that's just rushing. No, it's not wide and majestic, but here's the thing. It's one of those things that's so terrifying because there was no easing into it. There's no, I would have loved it. I like a God would say, okay, as you get about 10, 15 feet from it, then I'll cut the river off. No worries. That's not God. It was terrifying to know that here they were at the river's edge of this rushing river. You see, Yahweh's directions and leadings are oftentimes terrifying. It was terrifying for the people of God to come up to the Jordan's edge to see what he would do. Terrifying. 40 years earlier, their parents and grandparents had to face the Red Sea, the mighty ocean in front of them, 2 mountains on each side, the Egyptians closing in on them. Yahweh's directions and leading in your lives, the way he causes things to happen, allows other things to happen, it's oftentimes terrifying. So the question is, why? Why does God lead his people to oftentimes uncertain or just downright terrifying situations? The answer may be related in part, not the whole, in part, the answer to why does God lead me to the scary position I'm in my life, it could be related to an exam or test. Speaking of exams or tests, there's a father. Father says to his son, "Son, why did you get such a low score in that exam?" The son, "Absence." Father, "You were absent on the day of the exam?" The son, "No, but the boy who sits next to me was." I wonder if the exam for Israel was, would this next generation be terrified and not trust God the way their ancestors, their parents and grandparents did crossing the Red Sea? Right, so part of it, maybe God was just a test to see, man, did you guys learn anything? You heard the stories from your dad, your grandparents, about how I parted the Red Sea. This is a test to see now that you're facing a very similar body of water that you're scared. Is it a test in part that God wants to see? Have you learned anything? Have you learned to trust me more? Likewise, God orchestrates us to be in uncertain and terrified things. In part, it's a test to see, Mildred, here sits in the front row, Mildred, I've delivered you countless times now, right? You 50-something years old, 60-something years old. Are you going to trust me in this? Do you really feel nice? One of the things I learned in my life, and I'm a hypocrite because I don't follow it, I think God tests to see, do you think I'm stupid? Right? I just remember a point in my life, one of the amazing lessons God taught me is how many times, I'll preach it myself, how many times I react to news, I panic, I start behaving like God is stupid, right? And I don't know if it's just a country thing, but I just know every once in a while God thinks like, do you think I'm stupid? I see the need that you have. I see what's going on. Do you think I'm just stupid me? It's totally oblivious that this is what you're facing. So the application is to yourself, all right, don't say it out loud, fill in the blank. The terrifying, rushing Jordan River was to the nation of Israel as blank is to me right now. Right? So don't say it out loud. To yourself, fill in the blank. The terrifying, rushing Jordan River with its rushing waters. There's no, let me ease into it and see what God does. No, you're in it. You're seeing trees flying by, cattle that got swept into it. The terrifying, rushing Jordan River was to Israel as blank is to me right now. Are you terrified by where God has led you today? So again, the big idea is be encouraged and don't fear when facing uncertain and frightening times. We're looking at 3 truths. First, we saw Yahweh leads us through the unfamiliar places of our lives. Next, we saw Yahweh's directions and leadings are oftentimes terrifying. Some of that is to test us. And lastly, we conclude with Yahweh is the just-in-time God. Yahweh is the just-in-time God. We'll see in verses 14 through 17. To think about God as the just-in-time God reminds me of the just-in-time organist at the church down the street. The pastor of the church down the street was preoccupied with thoughts of how he was going to ask the congregation to come up with more money than they were expecting and budgeting for repairs to the church building. Therefore, he was a little annoyed. So immediately this Sunday morning, the guy down the street was pretty annoyed to find out that the regular organist was sick that day, and a substitute had been brought in at the last minute. The substitute wanted to know what to play. "Here's a copy of the service," the pastor said impatiently, barely hiding his frustration. "But you'll have to think of something to play after I make the announcement about the finances." So during the service, the pastor paused and said, "Brothers and sisters, we are in great difficulty. The roof repairs cost twice as much as we expected, and we need $4,000 more. Any of you who can pledge $100 or more, please stand up." At that moment, the substitute organist played the Star-Spangled Banner. And that is how the just-in-time substitute organist became the regular organist. So just in time, right? Well, she was smart, and that was cool. Judith with the music. So that was pretty smart, right? Just in time, playing the Star-Spangled Banner when he'd asked for people to stand. Here's Joshua chapter 3, verses 15 through 17, and we close. This is in the New International Reader's Version. So if you're someone and you're like, "Man, Dorian, man, I know you tell me to read the Bible more. I don't understand what I'm reading. Half the cities I can't pronounce. I don't follow it." My humble recommendation, I'm doing it. So even though it's, I think, technically for kids, so I read it to the boys, New International Reader's Version. You can just use an app or type in, John 3:16, NIRV. Boy, I really like how it reads. So if you're someone who says that, "Hey, I want to read more, but geez, I don't understand it," or maybe you're reading a passage in your regular Bible, but you're like, "Okay, I just read it. What does that mean?" Really liking this New International Reader's Version. It's like the NIV. I think it's technically aimed at kids, but I'm a hit from Indiana, and I'm loving it. Me of the two master's degree. It just real jumps out. It really is really clear, as you'll see here. So again, don't be ashamed to read this. Joshua 3, 15 through 17. The water of the Jordan was going over its banks. It always does that at the time the crops are being gathered. The priest came to the river. Their feet touched the water's edge. Right away, the water coming down the river stopped flowing. It piled up far away at a town called Adam, near Zarethan. The water flowing down to the Red Sea was completely cut off. So just remember, just a little Bible trivia, just as you grow in your knowledge of the Bible, God parted the Red Sea. He cut off. So imagine if if we were alive and standing there, imagine this as if his hand came, and so the river flowing down just stopped. So it kind of walled up, but a little further back. So God parted the Red Sea. He cut off, is the phrase, the Jordan River. The water flowing down to the Red Sea was completely cut off. So the people went across the Jordan River opposite Jericho. The priests carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. They stopped in the middle of the river and stood on dry ground. They stayed there until the whole nation of Israel had gone across on dry ground. God cut off the Jordan just in time when they needed it. And he does that same thing for you. Right? God was a just-in-time God. It wasn't like I would have liked, "Hey, you know what? When we're about a mile away, can you handle your business, God? Yeah, I don't want to get scared, right?" I just can't imagine being there on that muddy, marshy ground, watching, big old chunks of tree barks and stuff on them, wondering, how am I going to get my wife and my 10 and 12-year-old across this rushing river? It was when the priests put their foot into the river just in time that God cut it off. The concept is the reason God doesn't want us, right? This concept of God as a just-in-time God. This is the reason why God doesn't want us worrying about tomorrow. Jesus in Matthew 6 talks about it. He gives us grace for that situation that you're so worried about that's in the future, he gives you the grace when it's time for you to put your foot in there. Right? And I'm a hypocrite. I think to myself, I'm always, whenever I hear about a shooting or a kid being killed or something, I always think, man, would I be suicidal? What would I do if something were to happen to my sons? Or what would I ever do if I lost my job? Right? It's like, here's what I do. I love where I work. And so one of my ongoing fears is like, oh, geez, what if, what if something happens? Or what if my job situation changes? And where would I go else to work? God always has to smack me and think, why are you worried about something that hasn't happened yet when I'm a just-in-time God? Are you so worried about, what if the leadership of my job changes or the culture changes, or what if I, lay off if they have to downsize and I get let go? You stop it. When that happens, then when you're ready to step your foot, hey, Jordan, we have to regret to inform you, our funding is down, we have to let you go, then I'll give you the grace, right? What Jordan River is in your life where you're not stepping out in faith and diving in? Right? So there's no waiting in the Jordan. Is God telling you to do something today that he wants you to be all in, but you're like me, like, hey, you know what? No, that's too scary. I'm not going to come up to the edge. Can God, while I'm back 30 feet, do something? Is there something God's calling you to do that you're afraid of, that's uncertain to you? You're not doing it because, again, you want a God that's like, no, get this fear away from me where I'm nice and comfortable, 30, 40 feet away. That's not how God works. So again, the big idea is be encouraged and don't fear when facing uncertain and frightening times. Remember, Yahweh leads us through the unfamiliar places of our lives. Yahweh's directions and leadings are oftentimes terrifying, and Yahweh is the just-in-time God. If I could be of an assistance with the message, let me know. And if there's something going on in your life utterly unrelated to the message, let me know as well.